Hello, hello. Welcome to Tech Ascent, the podcast where we dive into the trends, strategies, and success stories that are reshaping the tech landscape as we know it today. I'm your host, Oliver Clingain. I'm also the founder of Ascension, the premier biz development partner within tech. Today, we're joined by the founder and CEO of AI Insurance, Cameron MacArthur. Cameron, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be
It's
here.
a pleasure to have you on. Would you mind telling the audience a little bit about yourself and what you do with AI Insurance?
Yeah, for sure. My name is Cameron MacArthur. I'm the founder of AI Insurance. We make a software for running small specialty insurance companies. So it's usually referred to in insurance as a core system software. And obviously, the AI piece, we've been around since 2018 with the goal of automating a lot of the processes, the back end of running these insurance programs with AI, because there's just a ton of reading and writing and data analysis that happens all the way from the first email through the underwriting process, all the way through to claims. Yeah.
Awesome. And it sounds like being the founder, you identified a solid gap in the market to go after. AI is obviously taken off as of late. How did you combine that gap with the new technology idea?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the gap side is that insurance is so big that there's a lot that people just don't realize, right? When you think about insurance, you're probably thinking of like the companies you see ads for, right? Your State Farms, your Progressives and stuff. And people just don't realize that there are about 10,000 insurance companies and programs that they've never heard of that are sort of the iceberg under the water. And it's all on the like commercial side, right? So if you're trying to get auto insurance, you log in on your phone, you say how old your car is, they give you a quote. If you own, I don't know, pick something weird, like a marina, right, with a bunch of docks and boats and stuff in it, you want insurance for that. And the process of, that insurance is really expensive, and the process for getting that is pretty manual. Your broker is going to send an email to a bunch of different possible insurance companies that might give you insurance for your marina, and he's going to include all your financials, and it's pretty muddy and nitty gritty, and it's quite manual. So those businesses are in a lot of cases still on like paper and pen and spreadsheets in a filing cabinet, and in the better cases are on email, maybe have a digital system. So that was kind of how we found the gap. And back in 2018, a lot of this stuff was just barely new, right? Like the new GPT-3 model hadn't come out. ChatGPT wasn't a thing yet. So we were initially using machine learning to predict indemnity payments on the claim side, which is how much is a claim going to cost, which can get pretty complicated in specialty insurance. As you might imagine, you get rear-ended, the bumper of a Subaru is like, we know how much that costs. It's not that deep. But if you're, a doctor and you get sued, that lawsuit might take 7 years. And so figuring out the cost of what that's going to cost the insurance company is really quite complicated. So that's where we got started, and then sort of ran into this cart before the horse problem where most of these companies were nowhere near a margin of needing, machine learning for indemnity prediction. They were still doing very manual things out of their email, and so we just saw a workflow gap there that could be filled, and quickly started to be filled by these large language models.
Awesome. And you mentioned there you had the cart before the horse problem, so to say. Nowadays, the ChatGPT AI is kind of, I wouldn't say it's common knowledge, but people are much more aware of it than when you started. How has the landscape shifted from when you started AI insurance back in the day to where it is now?
Yeah, the cool thing is just the speed at which it shifted. So, like, we were one of the first companies to use GPT-3, and we ran a hackathon with it. And at the time, we were able to use it for claims processing, right? Like, here's a complaint, read through this spreadsheet and like pull out this relevant information. We had to OCR it, and it was like a whole ordeal, and it was, fine at it. And what's really cool is you're almost kind of glad that you didn't invest too many resources in building things because of how fast these models are changing. Like you used to, when they first came out with the RAGs, which were this ability to basically set up a type of mini model that you can query with questions. It was a big deal. Pinecone and Canopy, you could set up a RAG in like 2 hours, but it only took text files. And you're like, okay, I could go through the process of taking all my files and turning them into text, or I could just wait like a month. And I bet that they'll handle, PDFs pretty soon. And you just wait it out. And then they're like, yep, now we take PDFs and Word documents and Excel spreadsheets and all these different things. And now it's like, do you even need a RAG? Token limits are getting so big that you can just pass them in directly. So I think the coolest part of seeing the landscape change is in real time seeing these problems that used to be 10 times harder become half as hard, and then half as hard again, and then half as hard again. And you have to do this weird math where you're like, should we even try to solve that? Or should I just wait 2 weeks and see if it's just going to get solved? And yeah, I think that's exciting and is really just interesting for the space, because you see some cases where someone spins up a whole company around something and you're like, is that going to get solved in a month and a half by by Vertex AI or something, right?
Yeah, no doubt. And with the tech space moving so fast, and AI insurance kind of being at, we'll call it the forefront of that, especially in the insurance space, we'll call insurance a dinosaur industry. With how fast the tech space is moving, how do you go about bridging that gap around education and awareness to the prospects you're speaking with?
It's a super good question, because I would say that in general, insurance is like 8 to 10 years behind fintech. And when we started, my quintessential cart before the horse example that I give is somebody said, hey, we want AI, here's my money, give me the AI. And we said, where's your claims data? And he said, once a quarter, I fly to Orange County and I sit down with my claims adjuster and they open up a filing cabinet and a card table and we spread the claims out, and that's how we review our claims. And I was like, wait, what? Man, you don't need AI. You need, the internet first. And I think that what's interesting about insurance is that it's by definition a risk-averse space, right? These people are called risk managers. They are evaluating risk. And so that can sometimes make innovation a little bit more difficult, but there is competition. And in the space that we sell to, like MGAs and MGUs and program managers, I think we're just starting to see that this is happening, and you'll lose to your competition if you're not doing these things, because it's there's so little risk when you can just see it happen in real time. So I think people are getting quite a bit less reticent, and then it also depends on the area of the business that you're looking at. If you were talking to the reinsurance markets that are just allocating capital, they're going to be less eager to use AI. If you're talking to the people that are like binding new business, right, and they're getting 500 quotes a day, and you're like, oh, you can handle twice as many quotes with half as many, people doing data entry, then that's a pretty clear competitive advantage. That's pretty low risk, right? It's like, if it doesn't work, you're doing the same thing you're doing today, and if it does work, then you've 5x your productivity. So we're seeing some of that shift, but it definitely is not a given. People are, in this industry, I think, a little bit more reticent to trust the people around them. Like we have a model where we can just read in invoice data, and you send us an invoice, we'll read it, we'll audit it against your defense counsel guidelines and do all the data entry for you. And we had a customer who, they had someone doing that manual data entry of every invoice. We gave this to them for free, and we have evidence that we make fewer mistakes than a human doing data entry. And then checked in 6 months later, and this person was still doing all the manual data entry. And it came down to the fact, candidly, that they're worried they're going to get fired if this AI is doing all the data entry. So I think there's a responsibility on the part of leadership to make it really clear to people, you're not going to get fired because you figured out how to do your job more efficiently. Because if you don't create that safety, then your competitors are going to beat you because they are going to use it, right? So you need to create a level of safety as a leader in an org where you can say, look, I encourage you to figure out how to get rid of the boring parts of your job with AI and do this data entry in a more efficient, faster way. I promise we will put you doing something new and different that is more value add to the org. And if people don't want to change, if they're like, well, I don't want to do more value add to the org stuff, I just want you to pay me to do data entry, then yeah, you probably should let them go and find someone who's more team aligned with your bigger vision, right?
It's an enhancement, not a replacement.
Yeah, I think it's just that what you are replacing is the stuff that your team isn't differentiated at, right? If your differentiated skill is that you're better at typing in data, then that's not a good sign.
Yeah, it is what it is after that. And Cameron, we mentioned you obviously give insurance companies a competitive advantage in their space with your platform. Being in the tech space, being in the AI space, like we said, companies can just spin up companies left and right using new AI, using new tech. How do you go out giving yourself a competitive advantage and breaking through the noise in the space?
Yeah, I mean, insurance is quite complicated. So it took us a long time to understand how to do this well from first principles. Insurance is also very relationship based. So understanding the space well enough to build technology that utilizes and works with all these different relationships, instead of it's just not as simple as hey, we're selling marketing software, right? There's on any one of our customers, there might be 7 or 8 different companies involved in the running of that insurance program. And so that makes things really complicated, right? From how you structure your business model to how you scale. That I think gives us a pretty unique advantage outside of just, hey, we're doing AI stuff, and we've also been at this for 7 years now, right? So I think there's a lot of people are tacking AI onto their existing products, where we've been thinking about this from first principles, literally from the day zero that large language models were released publicly, right? And actually a year before that, right? So our infrastructure level, the way we think about this from an architecture perspective on the tech side is foundational instead of as an afterthought.
No, awesome. And you mentioned you've been in the space for 7 years now. We've talked about how quickly it's progressed. What other kind of changes or trends or even challenges are you seeing nowadays that you might not have seen when you started about when it comes to discussing AI?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, do you remember when crypto happened and, in the first, not the really bad, FTX curve, the first curve where it was everyone's what's Bitcoin? What's Bitcoin? And then people started asking celebrities and stuff, and they're I'm buying Bitcoin. Yeah, right. And it was kind of everyone started picking up quickly. It went from, hey, this is this, nebulous concept that we've heard about since the 80s that, no one has ever really done well. And these guys are saying they're doing AI, but what is AI? Is this just machine learning? Is this just someone doing a linear regression and telling me it's AI? To organizations hiring people who are designated with the task of, you need to get AI in here now. We're going to lose half our business tomorrow if you don't figure out how to, scale us with AI now. And, obviously neither of those approaches is the best. You want to be thoughtful, because if you just slam all this stuff on, then, again, these models change in a month and a half and you implemented the wrong thing or that company doesn't exist anymore. So I think what's good is that this is adding value. This is a clear shift that needs to happen. And I think it's exciting for humanity that people recognize that and are like, okay, let's do this thing, right? A world where no one is doing data entry or like really, simple level data analysis or like, basic writing and stuff just looks very different than the work world today. And that's what's happening. So it's like, get there first or get there last, right? Or
Right.
You're going to be made to get there either way. So,
Right. No, and I'm sure all these shifts have made it kind of hard to plan for the future a little bit. But Cameron, what's the plans for AI insurance and going forward, whether it be for the rest of 2025 or even a little farther out?
yeah, great question. I mean, the good news is that these insurance companies still need to run, right? Regardless of how good AI gets, the concept of there exists risk and people will, transfer that risk in exchange for money is, something that will continue to exist and need to exist. And so, yeah, when we think about the future, it's really just scale at this point. We run close to 100 programs and, like I said, there's 10,000. So we think there's, we've got a drop in the bucket here and we really just want to get in front of everybody who's doing specialty insurance and see if we can help speed their process up with AI. So really just scale, I guess, is the plan going forward and continue to keep pace with these models as they develop and as things get more exciting. Take out more swaths of this workflow and let people spend more time doing what they like to do. That's the dream.
I love it. I love it. And hopefully some of these insurance people are listening. But Cameron, where can they find you if they are?
Good question. AIinsurance.io is going to be the best place to learn about our software and our company. Yeah.
Awesome. And for anybody listening, I'll be sure to tag AI Insurance down in the description. Also tag Cameron on LinkedIn as well. So thank you for tuning in. And Cameron, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Oliver. Appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure.